There's something about the highway at night that changes the way you breathe. Long stretches of asphalt, the yellow lines rolling under your headlights, and the sense that the world beyond the glass isn't quite the same one you woke up in. Truckers know this better than anyone. Out here, miles from the nearest town, the road has its own memory. It keeps stories, accidents, vanishings, things best left unspoken. And sometimes it whispers them back to anyone willing to listen. This book is a collection of those whispers. Stories swapped over bad coffee at truck stops, passed down across CB radios in the dead of night, retold at diesel counters and roadside diners where the fluorescent lights hum a little too loud. Some of them are case files, some folklore, some sit in the uneasy space between. They're stories that leave you wondering if the next way station or overpass might be waiting with more than just scales and steel. Now, I'm not here to tell you what's real and what's rumor. That's for you to decide. But I will say this. The men and women who told these tales weren't jokers or drunks. They were drivers, same as me, who knew every sound their rig made, every bump in the pavement. When they said they saw something, they meant it. So settle in. Read with the cab light low or the porch lamp burning. And if one of these stories makes you shiver, don't keep it to yourself. Truckers share warnings to keep each other alive, and stories like these travel best when passed along. Hit that like, drop a comment, tell a buddy, share it down the line. That's how legends survive. Rolling mile after mile, never running out of road. In the blue hour before dawn on March 3rd, 2018, long-haul driver Colton Cole, Avery, eased his Peterbilt 579 west along I-40. The Texas Panhandle spread flat as a coin beneath a pale sky. He'd been on the road 11 hours with one stop in Shamrock, bound for a distribution dock in Albuquerque with a load of canned goods. Wind buffeted the trailer in steady gusts, low 40s Fahrenheit, dry air, high visibility, routine. At 05:12, Cole radioed dispatch to confirm ETA. On time, easy miles, mile marker 406. His voice sounded calm. He added like a throwaway, overpass ahead looks wrong, looks low. At 05:19, his electronic logging device showed a sudden speed reduction and lane change onto the shoulder near mile 409, where a narrow county road overpass spans I-40. The ELD pinged a door ajar alert for 11 seconds, then closed. Hazard lights on. A standard safety pull-off. Nothing out of place on paper. When Cole missed the 0600 check-in and his truck showed stationary for 40 minutes, dispatcher Renee Wallace tried cell, then the truck's integrated system, then CB. No answer. At 06:12 per protocol, she called the Texas Department of Public Safety for a welfare check. Trooper Earl McKinney arrived 06:48. Sun had climbed, but the Panhandle light still looked silver and thin. The Peterbilt sat neat on the shoulder, nose angled slightly toward the gravel. Engine running, hazards clicking. The driver's door locked. Through the glass, logbook on the passenger seat, thermos steaming, wallet in the cup holder, a paper map folded to the Amarillo Tucumcari stretch. McKinney used emergency override to enter. Cab was orderly. Keys in ignition. Seat warm. No driver. Outside, the shoulder told a story that refused to finish. The gravel was soft from a rare drizzle 2 nights prior, perfect for impressions. A set of boot prints, size 11, ran from the driver's side, crossed the rumble strip, then angled up the embankment toward the overpass. Trooper McKinney followed. The boots climbed to the concrete footing, advanced 7 steps along the narrow maintenance ledge beneath the span, and stopped dead midway, as if the wearer stepped off into nothing. McKinney's bodycam audio captured him murmuring, "Where'd you go, partner?" Wind sighed under the bridge, a channeled current that made a low flute of the guardrail cables. DPS called in search and rescue. By 0900, helicopter with thermal imaging swept the corridor. No heat signatures except sun-warming concrete and westbound traffic. K9 teams worked both sides of the interstate. No scent trail past the ledge. No sign of a slide or fall. The right-of-way slopes were open, a body would have shown. Nothing. Back at the truck, technicians downloaded data. Anomalies. At 05:18:33, the truck's barometric sensor recorded a sharp drop from 1014 hPa to 996 hPa over 6 seconds. A microburst that never showed on nearby weather stations. Simultaneously, the external temp probe dipped from 43 degrees F to 28 degrees F for 4 seconds, then recovered. The dashcam, company policy, always on, had been manually disabled at 05:18:29. You needed a code to do that. Only the driver and fleet maintenance had it. Dispatch logs revealed Cole's final audio ping, captured by the hands-free mic, independent of the camera, at 05:18:31. Hold up. What is that on the beams? Metal clink, his door opening, boots on gravel. Then whine. Then something else. Forensic audio described it as subharmonic oscillation, a tone below human hearing translated as a throb in the waveform, cycling every 2 seconds. Underneath, faint, like a voice heard through a wall. Return line, return. Witnesses. There were 3. One, livestock hauler Wyatt Kemp, a mile behind at 05:17. Looked up at that overpass and swore I saw heat shimmer even though it was cold. Like the air over asphalt in July, but it climbed vertical, right from the center girders. 2, school bus driver Janie Pelham, eastbound at 06:35 before the trooper arrived. That truck of the light around it looked weird. Not brighter, just bluish like hospital hallways. Thought my eyes were playing tricks. 3, ranch hand Tyler Tuck Domings, whose family leases pasture north of the bridge. We get cattle spooked by storms, coyotes. This was different. Around 5:20, they all faced the overpass and stood that way, not moving. Ears pinned. Even my old bull, never seen M lock up like that. DPS canvassed the area. The county road above the interstate is little more than a ribbon of asphalt across waving prairie. On the bridge deck, just off the right shoulder, they found Cole's trucker cap caught in the guardrail lattice. Dry, clean. The underside band showed fine parallel scoring. Lab analysis later matched them to human fingernails, as if he had gripped the cap's brim and someone, or something, ripped it away. Cole's wife, Madison, confirmed he carried a Polaroid one step as a hobby. He liked to shoot skies. The camera wasn't in the cab. It wasn't in the truck sleeper. It wasn't at home. By day 2, the search widened to 5 miles in each direction. Nothing. DPS Sergeant Rosales wrote in his supplemental, "No evidence of foul play, no ransom, no financial motive. Driver reliable, no mental health flags." The report's closing paragraph cited disorientation and probable accidental fall into culvert, a theory impossible to square with the absence of a body, the absence of any slide marks, and the fact that the culvert beneath the overpass is a shallow concrete box that teams had already cleared. What the official file did not include: a maintenance crew called TX Dot to report unusual frost forming on the underside beams of the bridge at noon, hours after air temps hit 58 degrees F. The frost appeared in rings roughly the diameter of a dinner plate, concentric, more like patterns you'd see in sound experiments than weather. It sublimated in minutes when the crew approached. 3 weeks later, a ranch kid found a Polaroid photo in scrub 2 miles north of mile 409, weighed down by a rusted washer. The image is crooked, overexposed, a slice of bridge beam, a winter sky bleached white. In the middle, a blur like steam but edged, nearly geometric, a pale column that fades at top and bottom. TX Dot dismissed it as a light leak. Truckers who pass under that overpass don't. Since 2018, the Panhandle CB carries a standing warning: kill the dashcam before 409 or it'll kill itself. Some drivers swear you can hear a throb under the wind there if you crack the window. 7 seconds on, 7 off. A rhythm like breathing. They call it the overpass that breathes. And if you stop, old hands say, keep your cap tight and your eyes off the beams. Because something up there wants you to look up. And once you do, it knows your name. On January 14, 2015, veteran driver Lindy Kowalski guided her Freightliner Cascadia along M123, heading north through Michigan's Upper Peninsula toward a small paper mill in Sault Ste. Marie. She'd hauled winter up here for 20 years, lake effect squalls, black ice, moose on the shoulder. She'd seen it all. At 22:11, she told dispatch she'd make delivery by morning after catching her break near Whitefish Bay, where an old seasonal ferry lot sits empty in winter. Quiet spot. Done it before, she said. At 22:43, an isolated squall blew in from Superior, visibility dropping under a sheet of silver snow. Lindy slowed, eased into the old ferry lot and parked parallel to the water. Hazards on. Engine purring. Her ELD marked sleeper berth at 22:46. 6 minutes later, the system recorded a door open event, 11 seconds, then closed. Then nothing. At 06:15, Lindy missed her morning check-in. Her truck's GPS still showed the same coordinates. Dispatch called her cell. No answer. Called the integrated system. No answer. They phoned Chippewa County Sheriff. Deputy Armand Pelletier arrived 07:02. Dawn still a blue bruise over the frozen bay. The lot was empty except for 2 footprints in fresh powder crossing from the truck to the shoreline. Lindy's Freightliner idled clean, exhaust a steady plume, driver's door locked. Inside, coffee still warm thanks to the idling block heater, wool hat on the dash, logbook open, her scent. Christopher medal hung from the visor. She always tapped it before big bridges. The cab was neat, keys in ignition. No driver. Outside again. Pelletier followed the prints. They were crisp, deep, straightforward. They ended at the lip where the snowdrift falls away to frozen lake, just stopped. No impact crater, no slide, no broken crust where someone would have stepped down onto the ice. The lake ice itself was covered in wind-scoured snow, blank and featureless to the horizon. Sheriff Diane Marquette mustered volunteers, ice rescue, and a helicopter once the wind eased. No holes in ice within a half mile. The ice had been measured 8 inches thick 3 days earlier. It roared and cracked with the living noises of winter, but nowhere showed a breach. Inside the truck, technicians pulled dashcam footage. It ended at 22:47, a minute after she parked. The last frames show snow sweeping the lot like shredded paper. Audio captured Lindy's breath, a hum she always did when thinking, the click of her seatbelt release, and then a sound the lab later described as harmonic stacking, a chord of tones, rising in perfect fifths, low to high, the way a choir might warm up. The chord lasted 9 seconds and carried a shimmering reverb not explainable by snow and wind. On top of it, just before the file cuts, Lindy says quietly, not fearfully, "That's pretty." Witness accounts began to surface. One, a night maintenance worker, Garrett Noon, sanding a stretch of M123 around 2250, reported, "I saw a column of light on the bay, not lightning. Vertical, thin, white with a green edge. Lasted maybe 2 seconds. Thought it was the aurora doing a weird trick." Two ice fishermen packing up near Naamikong Point later told DNR they heard what sounded like a church organ under the ice around 23:00. DNR chalked it to pressure ridges singing, an ordinary superior phenomenon. The men insisted they'd heard voices harmonizing inside the organ sound. The most unnerving testimony came from a retired Coast Guard boatswain's mate, Ed Garvey, who had watched that ferry lot for 30 winters. He came forward a week later after initial news coverage. "I seen Fata Morgana out there, superior tricks with light since forever," he said. "But around 11 that night, through my kitchen window, I watched a shape out over the ice. Not a person. A tall thing like a gate, luminous like frost-catching moonlight. It flickered and then folded. Not down, in like a book closing on itself. Then dark. Theories ran from the mundane. Lindy walked onto the ice and went through a soft spot to the lurid. But the footprints ended on air, and divers found nothing. Helicopter FLIR found no residual heat trail. The cell tower logs showed Lindy's phone remained in the cab, battery draining in the cold. Yet the truck's internal temp sensor recorded a localized drop to 10 degrees F inside the cab at 22:49, while the block heater held ambient around 45 degrees F. The cold zone lasted 12 seconds, centered at the driver's seat, then normalized. Chippewa County's official report listed hypothermia exposure and probable ice break. The case is open, inactive. What the report does not call out in bold: the St. Christopher medal did not hang from the visor when the truck reached impound. It was discovered 1 month later by a parks employee clearing snow from the closed ferry ramp. It lay upright, balanced on edge at the lip, facing the bay, an odd feat for a coin-weight pendant in wind. A thin rime had formed around it, a perfect circle, as if sound had drawn frost into a standing wave. Since Lindy vanished, local drivers blow past Whitefish Bay in winter, even if it means breaking the speed they'd never admit on paper. On nights when aurora dances, some say you can stand on the lot and hear a distant choir mixed into the ice's natural groan, a chord that stacks itself until you feel it in your teeth. If you ever hear it alone, old coasties say, don't say it's pretty. Don't answer at all. On May 9, 2019, reefer driver Ruben Delgado hauled south along CA-99, skirting orchards and packing houses through the Central Valley. His trailer carried fresh lettuce bound for a Modesto cross-dock. It was 88 degrees F and dry. Chile fog was months away. The night smelled like dust and orange blossom. At 21:03, Ruben checked in. Running cool, temp steady, past Manteca, easy night. At 21:31, His GPS logged an unscheduled exit onto a county farm road near Ripon, a narrow lane lined with citrus windbreaks and irrigation ditches. His ELD shows a decel to 0 at 21:36 at a field pull-off known to local drivers as the Citrus Line. He never radioed the change. Hazard lights flicked on. The reefer unit continued to hum at 34 degrees F. At 21:37, the driver's door opened. A second later, the passenger door opened, though post-incident prints and interior scuffs suggested no one climbed in from that side. Both doors shut in quick sequence. Then the truck sat breathing and blinking under a waxing moon. When Ruben missed his 22:00 temperature verification call, a strict reefer protocol, dispatch rang him, then rang him again. No answer. A third call triggered the fleet's cold chain alert. They sent the nearest partner wrecker to check the rig and notified San Joaquin County Sheriff. Deputy Tasha Lai reached the truck at 22:54. The Peterbilt sat just off the lane, engine running, reefer steady, cab locked. Inside, through the glass, Lai saw a modest altar, the kind a lot of valley drivers keep. A laminated holy card, a mini rosary, a photo of Ruben's daughter at school science fair, coffee thermos, logbook open, phone on the mount, screen dark. In the orchard dust outside, boot prints left the driver's side and walked a straight line along the row between trees, parallel to the farm road. Lai followed with her flashlight. At about 30 paces, the prints grew crisp, as if the soil were softer, then disappeared altogether. No wind had erased them. No irrigation had flowed. The dust was undisturbed ahead. She swung the beam and saw something else. A fine vertical stripe of pollen clung to the air between two trees, flickering like dust in a sun shaft. But there was no sun, only moonlight. When she stepped through it, her radio squelched, then fell silent for 7 seconds before returning, clock desensed by 00:00:07. Back at the truck, deputies popped the lock. The cab was warm, too warm. The internal sensor read 104 degrees F, though the evening outside ticked down towards 75. The A/C was on. The heater wasn't. The hot spot centered at the passenger seat. A thermal camera showed it glow and fade as if it were cooling from contact. Lab later found pollen on that seat, not unusual near groves, but it was uncrushed, fresh as if sifted, not ground by clothing or skin. The dash cam, disabled at 21:35:58. The audio channel from the hands-free mic, independent, captured a code entry beep, then Ruben's voice, softer than usual. You smell that, like the packing house, but sweeter. A pause, then not his voice at all but something layered, like his voice doubled and delayed a fraction of a second. Come on, it's only a minute. He answers his own voice, just a minute. The cab mic caught the driver's door latch, his boots on the step, the passenger door latch, and a whisper like wind in dry leaves that mimicked the syllables. Just a minute. Neighbors on the farm road gave statements. One, field boss Alma Santiago, working late with a generator light, reported smell anomalies, like orange oil so strong it burned my eyes. We pack citrus in winter, not May. I looked up, saw heat ripples across the lane, but the air was cool. 2, night irrigator Jessus Ochoa said he saw lights between the rows like trucks coming down the orchard lanes, except no dust rose, and when he waved, the lights passed through trees at chest height and kept going. He assumed the sheriff was flying a drone until he heard CB chatter on his Bluetooth headphones, though he doesn't own a CB. It was old men arguing about packing house rates like it was 1999. I used to ride with my uncle back then. I recognized one voice. He died in 2004. Sheriff's detectives popped the reefer seals to check whether heat, light, or tampering had occurred. Temperature logs were textbook, lettuce intact. Yet the reefer's telematics recorded power draw spikes at 21:38 and 21:39, as if the unit fought an invisible heat load for 11 seconds each time, then settled. Day 2, trackers from search and rescue ran dogs along the roads. The dogs refused to enter a 50-yard stretch between trees opposite the pollen stripe, whining and sidestepping with hackles raised. One handler noted a pressure change, ears popping, like descending in an airplane when he crossed the farm road 10 yards north of the truck. The barometer on his watch dipped 10 h-pa, then rebounded. Weather stations around Ripon showed no such micro-event. A week later, a detasseling crew found Ruben's ball cap 30 feet up in a windbreak eucalyptus, clean as a showroom sample, no dust, no bird stains. Pollen analysis said it carried a cocktail, citrus out of season, oleander none nearby, and yerba santa native on the Sierra foothills, not in that orchard. The cap's plastic snap was warped as if it had been heated then cooled, but the fabric brim was perfect. Officially, San Joaquin County listed Ruben Delgado as a missing person with no signs of foul play. Unofficially, the packing houses quietly posted a midnight curfew on that road. The farm installed a gate no one keeps locked. Trucker forums call it the citrus line. Drivers swap instructions like ritual. Don't open your passenger door. Don't step between the second and third trees. If you smell orange oil in May, roll up your windows and count to 7, twice. They say some nights you can hear pallet jacks rolling on concrete where there is no packing floor, and voices from a CB channel nobody uses anymore, arguing rates that were killed by the last recession. A produce hauler named Little Manny left a small shrine at the pull-off, a St. Jude candle, a hair tie from Ruben's daughter, a marker pen sign. Just a minute with a line through the words. On warm nights, the candle's flame leans toward the orchard even when the wind is wrong. No one parks there now, not even for a minute. On October 19, 2014, veteran flatbedder Evan Ridge McAllister snaked his Kenworth T680 south on WV52, the road carving into the coal hills like a seam. He'd strapped down a load of rebar out of Huntington, bound for a bridge job near Bluefield. He knew these hills, grind up, engine break down, no funny business in the switchbacks above Black Hollow. At 21:07, he radioed dispatch, through Matewan, fog setting in the hollers, but I'm good. The audio carries a harmonica note he sometimes whistled when alone. At 21:29, his ELD shows a reduction to 8 mph climbing the long grade before the overlook pull-off. 21:31, blinker right, hazard on, engine idling at the gravel turnout. At 21:33, the driver door opens and closes. Seconds later, the door opens again for 4 seconds, then nothing. When Ridge missed his 22:00 check, dispatcher Carlene Prout tried his cell, the truck system, then CB19. No answer. She pinged Mingo County Sheriff. Deputy Wyatt Farrell rolled up at 22:42 to a sky like charcoal and fog pooling in the ravines. Ridge's Kenworth sat straight on the gravel, facing a black wall of timber. Engine idled smooth. Driver's door locked. Through the glass, Thermos steaming, ball cap on the dash with a coal script token pinned to it. Ridge collected them. Logbook open, a pocket New Testament tucked in the door pocket. Seat warm, no ridge. Outside, Farrell found boot prints that ran from the driver's side toward the guardrail at the overlook. They continued onto the narrow dirt track that deer and four-wheelers use, descended 5 yards, and ended on a rock slab slick with fog. No slide marks, no scuffs downward, and the slope beyond is a near vertical drop through poplar and laurel. He swung his light. The fog below carried a faint orange glow, like the sodium vapor yard lights at an old coal tipple. But there's no tipple in Black Hollow, not for 30 years. Sheriff mustered SAR, FLIR, and a rappel team by 0030. No heat signature. No scent past the stone. A state police helo worked the gorge until fuel demanded they break off. Nothing. Technicians pulled the truck's data. At 21:30:58, the accelerometer recorded a quick, localized jolt, as if something tapped the chassis, without a corresponding road input. At 21:31:03, external temp fell from 49 degrees F to 33 degrees F in 3 seconds and hung there for exactly 13 seconds, then rebounded. The dashcam had been manually disabled at 21:31:00. Code required. A Ridge knew it. The hands-free mic recorded ambient sound, idling engine, Ridge breathing, the squeak of his seat, the door latch, his boots on gravel, then a low-frequency tone that spectrographers later described as a stack of fifths forming a minor chord. Underneath rides a whisper like air over bottle tops, coalescing into boosted syllables when filtered. Down, we're still here, down. Ridge's voice answers plain as day. Ain't supposed to be any lights down there. He steps away. The last thing the mic catches is a hollow thump like a coal cart bumping a bumper block. Then the door opening again, even though he's already outside. Witnesses. Appalachia always has witnesses. One, retired Beltman Cletus Ward, who lives on a ridge opposite Black Hollow, told deputies he saw company lights, where there hasn't been a company since 1989. 4 rows, he said, like the old breaker, orange, steady in the fog. Then they walked. I know what I saw, walked up the hill and went out. He wouldn't elaborate on walked. 2, Nurse Amy Roush, driving north on 52 at 21:40, reported her radio, not the CB, the FM, swapping stations on its own, landing repeatedly on a hymn in reverse. I know what a friend we have in Jesus backward when I hear it. She joked weakly to the deputy later. 3, 2 teenage coon hunters admitted, after much yes sir, no sir, that their hounds balked at the hollow that night, staring downhill with tails between legs, whining like sirens were blowing under the ground. Daylight brought more puzzle. Dew beaded the guardrail into concentric circles, not linear drops. Ridge's coal script token was found embedded halfway into the soft tar topcoat of the pull-off, as if pressed while the tar was warm. But the night had been cold. The tar was cold at midnight and colder at dawn. State police canvassed the valley for a fall victim. No body, no torn brush, no clothing, nothing in the creek. Ridge's cap surfaced 3 weeks later, caught 40 feet up in a sycamore on the opposite slope, clean as if placed. The script token was still pinned on, polished bright where fingers might worry it. The pin's clasp showed microscopic stress lines consistent with rapid cold-hot cycling. Labs speak for flash freeze and thaw. Officially, probable fall, cause unknown. Unofficially, every driver in Mingo and McDowell counties swapped the same advice. Don't pull off above Black Hollow at night. Old hands told even older stories about company whistles blowing at midnight decades after the shafts were sealed, and tipple lights winking through fog where there's no power. Trucker folklore settled on a name, the pay line. The idea that the dead line up like payday under those orange lamps, waiting for a man who still knows his way around a breaker to clock in. They say if you sit quiet at that overlook with your engine off, you'll feel coal dust on your tongue though the tipples are gone, and hear a clack from below like a cart nudged once, twice down. And if you hear a voice call your name from the fog, you don't answer, not in these hills, not down. On the night of March 11, 2014, veteran trucker Harold Hal McKinney, age 54, was making a routine haul up Interstate 5, climbing the steep grade toward Tejon Pass in Southern California. Known as the Grapevine to every driver west of the Rockies, the pass is infamous for its brutal winds, brake-burning slopes, and sudden weather shifts. Hal had run this route for nearly 30 years. His fellow drivers knew him as steady, punctual, and unshakable, a man who laughed at ghost stories told over CB radios in the dead of night. But what happened to Hal on Tejon that night remains one of the most unsettling mysteries in California trucking history. According to dispatch logs at Golden State Freight, Hal checked in at 10:12 p.m., just south of Bakersfield. He reported light traffic, clear skies, and the familiar crosswinds beginning to kick up as he approached the climb. His last words, recorded in the system, should be across the grade in an hour. Nothing but the wind out here tonight. By 11:03 p.m., Hal's truck GPS showed him cresting the summit near mile marker 212. After that, the truck began behaving strangely. The electronic logging device recorded rapid speed fluctuations, dropping from 48 mph to 12, then surging back to 50 in less than a minute. At 11:07 p.m., the system pinged an error. Unstable load distribution, verify cargo. Then silence, no further check-ins. At 4:45 a.m., a CHP patrol officer found Hal's rig pulled neatly onto a turnout on the western descent. The truck's hazard lights were on, the engine idling. Inside the cab, Hal's wallet, cell phone, and logbook opened to a final entry written at 11:05 p.m. Wind's changing, feels wrong, sounds like voices in it. Hal himself was gone. Even more troubling, the driver's seat was still warm to the touch, the coffee in his thermos half full and steaming. The keys were in the ignition. His boots were still on the floor mat. But there were no footprints anywhere around the truck, not in the dirt, not in the gravel shoulder. Golden State Freight's trucks were all equipped with forward-facing dash cameras. The footage from Hal's truck, recovered later, ended abruptly at 11:06 p.m., 1 minute after his final logbook entry. The last frames showed the dark, empty descent ahead, but the audio told a different story. For 30 seconds before the cut, a deep howling can be heard, not like ordinary wind but layered, rising and falling in pitch as though multiple voices were crying out in unison. Right before the feed cuts, Hal's voice mutters, "Not possible there in the wind." Investigators canvassed the area and uncovered 3 independent reports from other drivers that same night. Edgar Ruiz, hauling produce northbound at 11:15 p.m., reported seeing a set of blue-white lights flickering above the ridgeline, like emergency strobes but floating against the wind. Marion Collins, driving a pickup westbound around 11:30 p.m., claimed her radio filled with static, then a woman's voice repeating, "Don't stop, "Don't stop." She was alone on the road at the time. Truck driver Joseph Hanley, parked at the Tejon rest area, said his entire rig shook violently, like a microburst hit it, though the air around him was perfectly still. It wasn't normal wind, he insisted. It was like something alive pushed against the truck, then let go. When Hal's truck was towed and examined, investigators found several odd details. The windshield exterior bore streaks of a clear, viscous substance that tested similar to resin but with no known commercial match. The onboard sensors had logged a sudden drop in cabin temperature at 11:06 p.m. from 72 degrees F to 29 degrees F in less than 60 seconds. The CB radio was set to channel 19, but the microphone was fused in the transmit position, as though melted into place by intense heat. Most bizarrely, the trailer cargo weight had shifted by nearly 800 pounds, though the seals were intact and the inventory untouched. Authorities considered several explanations. Medical emergency, dismissed when Hal's body failed to turn up anywhere along the grade or surrounding terrain. Criminal abduction, no signs of forced entry, no ransom demands, no evidence of foul play. Environmental factors, sudden crosswinds, hallucinations from fatigue possible, but they don't explain the melted radio mic or missing driver. Among truckers, the consensus veered elsewhere. For decades, stories had circulated about the voices on Tejon, drivers hearing whispers in the wind, urging them to pull over or take a wrong turn. Most dismissed it as CB chatter distorted by the canyons. But after Hal's disappearance, those whispers carried new weight. Search teams scoured the rugged hillsides for 2 weeks. Not a trace of Hal McKinney was ever found. Dogs brought in to track his scent circled back repeatedly to the truck, then lay down whining, refusing to move further. Helicopters with thermal imaging detected no sign of a body. Golden State Freight retired Hal's truck after multiple replacement drivers complained of strange malfunctions. Radios switching stations by themselves. Sudden blasts of freezing air in the cab. Hazard lights flickering in sync with the wind outside. One driver swore he heard Hal's voice whispering through the static. "Don't listen. Don't stop." He quit the company the next day. The turnout where Hal's truck was found has since gained a reputation. Many drivers refuse to stop there at night. Some say during strong crosswinds you can still hear the CB static crackle, a man's voice half drowned in the gale, calling for help. The official CHP report lists the incident as an unexplained disappearance, presumed lost. But within the trucking community, Hal's story lives on. They call it crosswinds over Tejon, a reminder that even a veteran with 30 years on the road can vanish in a place where the wind itself seems alive. To this day, drivers crossing Tejon Pass at night often keep their radios turned low and their windows sealed tight. And if the wind begins to sound like voices, they grip the wheel harder, eyes fixed on the road ahead, praying they don't hear someone whisper their name. On the night of July 14, 2015, trucker Daniel "Danny" Holt, age 46, was hauling a load of lumber southbound on U.S. Highway 281 through northern Texas. His route would take him past the sprawling waters of Lake Whitney, a man-made reservoir with a massive spillway channeling floodwaters into the Brazos River. The road near the dam is notorious among drivers, not for traffic or steep grades, but for the strange lights that some claim dance above the water after midnight. Danny had run the 281 route dozens of times. He laughed off the stories. Lights on the water, swamp gas, reflections. He once told another driver, nothing out there but wind and water. But his disappearance near the Lake Whitney spillway remains one of the strangest cases in Texas trucking history. At 12:42 a.m., Danny checked in with dispatch. He reported clear skies, light traffic, and that he would push through to Waco before resting. His final words, "Crossing the lake now. Winds picking up, seeing some kind of glow off the spillway, probably floodlights. I'll keep rolling." It was the last anyone heard from him. At 1:18 a.m., Golden Timber Freight's monitoring system logged Danny's truck slowing from 55 mph to a crawl just south of the spillway turnout. At 1:22, the GPS showed the rig stopped completely on the shoulder. The hazard lights activated automatically, then cut off. At 1:23 a.m., the system lost connection. The truck would be found hours later, but Danny was gone. At 6:15 a.m., a state trooper spotted the idling Freightliner on the shoulder just past the spillway bridge. The doors were locked. Through the windshield, the trooper saw Danny's logbook open on the dash, a half-empty soda in the cup holder, and his wallet on the passenger seat. The cab was neat, undisturbed. When they forced entry, investigators noted something unusual. The driver's seat was empty, but the seatbelt was still buckled, pulled tight, as though holding an invisible passenger. The thermos of coffee was warm to the touch. Danny's cell phone was in the door pocket, battery drained completely despite being plugged into a charger. Danny's last handwritten entry, scrawled just minutes before the truck stopped, reads simply, "Lights above spillway, not aircraft, moving wrong, coming closer." The writing trailed off mid-sentence, the pen line dragging diagonally across the page. Several independent reports surfaced that same night. Trucker James Cole, a mile behind Danny, said he saw his rig slow suddenly. Looked like he was rubbernecking. Then I saw this glow above the spillway, white but with blue edges. It wasn't headlights. It floated. I blinked and it was gone. Local fisherman Ray Martinez on the lake shore at 1 a.m. reported hearing a low humming, like a big power transformer, followed by 3 bright orbs skimming the water before vanishing straight upward. High school student Kelly Dawson, driving home from a late shift in Whitney, reported her car radio filling with static near the dam. She swore she heard a man's voice whisper, "Don't look at the lights," though she was alone in the car. When Danny's truck was towed and inspected, investigators noted multiple anomalies. Electrical failure. The entire fuse panel had blown simultaneously at 1:23 a.m., without evidence of overload or fire damage. Windshield residue. A faint, iridescent film on the exterior glass. Under lab analysis, it resembled calcium deposits, yet it emitted faint luminescence under UV light. Trailer weight. The cargo scales showed the load was lighter by nearly 500 pounds compared to departure. No tampering with seals. The lumber stacks were intact but shifted slightly as though compressed by sudden downward force. CB radio. Set to an unused emergency frequency. The mic recorded a 30-second loop of static punctuated by a distorted male voice. They rise when the water falls. Long before Danny vanished, locals whispered about the spillway lights. Fishermen told stories of pale orbs drifting above the floodgates, luring night boaters too close to the current. One tale from the 1970s described 3 men disappearing during a midnight catfishing trip. Their boat was found circling, engine running. with no crew aboard. Truckers had their own lore. On late-night CB channels, drivers spoke of lights pacing rigs along the 281 bridge, then veering toward the spillway. Most chalked it up to tired eyes, reflections from water towers, or aircraft from nearby bases. After Danny's case, those whispers became warnings. For 2 weeks, law enforcement scoured the area, shorelines, woods, even dragnet sweeps of the spillway basin. Divers found nothing. Cadaver dogs led searchers to the edge of the water, then circled, confused, refusing to enter. Helicopters with thermal imaging detected no trace of a body. On July 28th, a park ranger found something bizarre. Danny's trucker cap, wedged in the steel grate of the spillway fence, nearly 30 feet above the water. The fabric was bone dry, unstained, as if it had never touched the lake. The inside band bore deep scratch marks, consistent with human fingernails clawing into it. Authorities floated several explanations. Accidental fall. Danny left his truck, wandered near the spillway, and fell. But no body, no clothing, no trace was ever recovered. Foul play, dismissed. No evidence of struggle, no suspects, and his wallet and cash were untouched. Suicide, rejected by family and colleagues. Danny had no history of depression and had just celebrated his daughter's engagement. Unofficially, troopers admitted the case didn't fit any rational explanation. One investigator, speaking off record, said, "It looked like he was taken right out of the seat, buckled in. Like he didn't leave the trunk, like he was pulled through it." Golden Timber Freight retired Danny's truck within months. Replacement drivers complained of malfunctions near water crossings, radios dying, windshield fogging instantly, dashboard gauges freezing. One swore the CB crackled with Danny's voice whispering, "Don't stop at the spillway." The turnout south of the dam is now avoided by most truckers. Some say if you pull over there after midnight, you'll see faint orbs rising from the water, swirling like fireflies before vanishing. Others claim the humming returns on clear nights, vibrating through the guardrails. To this day, truckers crossing the Lake Whitney spillway roll up their windows, keep their eyes locked straight ahead, and pray they don't glimpse lights dancing on the water. The official Texas Department of Public Safety report still lists Danny Holt as a missing person, presumed drowned. But among those who drive the midnight highways, his case is more than a statistic. It's a warning. Don't stop when the lights appear, because once they rise from the spillway, they don't let you leave. On the night of November 2nd, 2012, trucker Rick Dunbar, age 52, was driving a refrigerated trailer loaded with produce eastbound on Interstate 70 through Missouri. A reliable veteran with nearly 3 decades on the road, Rick was known among fellow drivers for his calm demeanor and spotless safety record. His route that night was ordinary. St. Louis to Indianapolis, a run he had made dozens of times. But just past exit 34, near a quiet interchange flanked by woods and old farmhouses, Rick's truck jackknifed across the interstate. The wreck blocked traffic for hours, and when first responders arrived, they found something even stranger than the accident itself. Rick was gone. At 11:47 p.m., highway cameras recorded Rick's rig traveling normally at 62 mph. Without warning, the truck veered sharply right, tires locking as though the brakes had been slammed. The trailer swung out, skidding sideways across both lanes. Remarkably, no other vehicles were struck. When troopers arrived minutes later, they found the tractor upright, engine idling, headlights blazing. The trailer blocked both lanes, wheels embedded in the grassy median. The cab door was closed. Inside, Rick's wallet, phone, CB radio, and logbook. His coffee thermos was still steaming, but the driver's seat was empty. Most disturbing of all, the seatbelt was fastened tight, as though holding a body that was no longer there. Rick's last handwritten note was timestamped 11:44 p.m. and reads simply, "Exit 34 saw someone on the shoulder, waving me down, wrong this time of night." The entry ended abruptly, pen stroke trailing across the page as though interrupted. Several drivers reported unusual events in the minutes before and after the jackknife. Tom Wilkins, hauling livestock a mile behind Rick, said he saw a figure in the breakdown lane, tall, wearing something reflective, waving both arms. Looked like a trooper or construction worker, Wilkins recalled. But when I passed, there was nobody there. Seconds later, he saw Rick's truck swerve. Angela Boyd, heading westbound, said she saw blue-white lights in the tree line near exit 34, flickering like emergency strobes but with no vehicles present. "I thought it was a wreck ahead," she told investigators, but the lights just blinked out. Local resident Harold Givens, who lives half a mile from the interchange, reported hearing a deep humming around midnight, like a power line vibrating but lower. Dogs in the neighborhood went nuts, barking and whining. Then it all stopped. The truck itself yielded anomalies that investigators struggled to explain. Brake system. The event data recorder showed the brakes had been engaged fully, but no pedal pressure was detected. It was as if the system had activated on its own. Electrical surge. At 11:46 p.m., 1 minute before the jackknife, the cab electronics registered a sudden power drain. Radio, lights, GPS, all flickering simultaneously before recovering. Windshield smears. A thin residue on the exterior glass glowed faintly under UV light, though chemical tests identified it only as organic compounds of unknown origin. CB microphone, found fused into the transmit position, as if melted by high heat, yet no burn damage elsewhere in the cab. Long before Rick vanished, Exit 34 carried a reputation among Missouri truckers. Stories circulated on CB channels about the flagger, a phantom figure who appeared at the roadside signaling rigs to pull over. Some drivers ignored it. Others swore they braked instinctively as though compelled. The stories always ended the same, with equipment failures, sudden gusts of wind, and feelings of being watched from the tree line. Local lore stretches back further. In the 1950s, a highway worker was reportedly killed during construction of the interchange when a semi barreled through a work zone. Some say his ghost lingers, waving frantically to warn others. But the lights and electrical disturbances reported by drivers suggest something stranger than a simple haunting. For 2 weeks, authorities combed the woods and fields around Exit 34. Bloodhounds picked up Rick's scent at the cab door, followed it 10 yards into the grass, then stopped cold. The trail ended as if he had vanished mid-step. Helicopters with thermal imaging found no sign of him. Local volunteers dragged nearby ponds. Nothing. Rick Dunbar had disappeared without a trace. Official explanations never satisfied investigators. Medical emergency. Perhaps Rick became disoriented and wandered off. But his belongings, including wallet and shoes, were left behind. Criminal foul play. No evidence of struggle, no suspects, no ransom demands. His family insisted he had no enemies. Voluntary disappearance. Dismissed. Rick had been happily married 29 years with a daughter expecting her first child. He was days from retirement. Unofficially, troopers admitted the scene didn't add up. People don't buckle themselves in and then walk out. One officer remarked. Golden State Freight retired Rick's truck within months. Replacement drivers complained of eerie malfunctions near exit 34. Radios blasting static, headlights dimming, and in one case the distinct sound of a voice whispering, "Pull over." Some drivers detour around the interchange entirely, adding miles to their runs. Others accelerate through, eyes fixed on the road, ignoring any movement on the shoulder. At night, locals still report strange flickers in the trees near the exit, pale, strobe-like glows that vanish when approached. Dogs whine and cower, ears pressed flat as if hearing something their owners can't. The Missouri State Police list Rick Dunbar as a missing person, presumed dead. The file remains open but inactive. For his family, the lack of closure is devastating. For truckers, his story is another entry in the growing folklore of America's highways. They call it the jackknife at exit 34, a tale told in diners and truck stops, always with the same warning. If you see someone waving you down on a lonely stretch of road, especially near an old interchange, don't stop. Don't even look. Because sometimes the figure on the shoulder isn't looking for help, it's looking for you. On the night of March 19, 2014, long-haul driver Earl McKinney, age 49, was hauling a load of frozen meat eastbound on US Route 60, cutting through the Appalachian foothills of West Virginia. His route was familiar, Charleston to Richmond, a corridor he'd run for nearly 20 years. Earl was a creature of habit, known for punctual deliveries and meticulous logbooks. But somewhere near a little-used span called the Hollow Bridge, Earl vanished, leaving behind one of the strangest unsolved cases in modern trucking. At 12:08 a.m., Earl radioed dispatch from mile marker 212. "Fog's getting thick near the river," he said. "Crossing the Hollow Bridge now, seeing some kind of lights under it, not traffic, don't look right." His voice cut mid-sentence, replaced by static. Dispatch tried repeatedly to raise him, but no response came through. At 12:11 a.m., Earl's GPS tracker showed the truck slowing abruptly on the bridge itself. 3 minutes later, the signal went dead. By sunrise, state troopers found Earl's Freightliner sitting at the midpoint of the bridge. The truck was idling in neutral, hazard lights flashing, cab door shut. Inside, they found Earl's wallet, phone, thermos, and logbook. His jacket still hung on the seat back, but Earl himself was gone. Even stranger, the driver's side door was locked from the inside. Investigators had to pry it open. The logbook, open on the dashboard, contained a final, hurried scrawl. "Voices under bridge. Sound like radio but no words. Lights moving in the water, coming up through the fog." The pen line trailed into a jagged streak across the page, ink pooling as though the pen had been snatched mid-stroke. Several independent reports surfaced in the hours surrounding Earl's disappearance. Local fisherman Paul Hatcher, night fishing near the river, swore he saw a glow like lanterns drifting beneath the bridge at midnight. They weren't reflections, he insisted. They rose up slow like bubbles, then blinked out. Driver Tammy Rhodes, 20 minutes behind Earl, reported her CB erupting with static as she neared the span. "Then I heard him," she said, "clear as day, don't stop, over and over. But his voice sounded bent, like underwater." Resident Mary Ellen Wyatt, whose farmhouse overlooked the hollow, said her dogs went wild around midnight, barking and clawing at the door. She looked out toward the bridge and saw a pale sheet of fog glowing from inside like there were lamps hidden in it. Investigators combed through Earl's rig for answers. What they found only deepened the mystery. Electrical surge at 12:09 a.m. The truck's data recorder registered a simultaneous failure across all systems: lights, GPS, refrigeration, lasting 47 seconds before partial recovery. Windshield residue, a faint, iridescent film on the exterior glass, similar to calcium but faintly bioluminescent under UV light. CB radio, locked on an unused frequency. The playback buffer held 30 seconds of distorted whispers, unintelligible but rhythmic like chanting. Bridge rail, scratches along the guardrail exactly where the truck had stopped. The markings were deep, vertical gouges, as though something clawed upward from beneath. The hollow bridge had carried whispers long before Earl disappeared. Local lore tells of drownings in the 1930s, when rising floods swept families into the river below. Fishermen claimed the dead lingered, their voices echoing under the span on foggy nights. Truckers, for their part, told stories of rigs stalling on the bridge, electronics failing, and ghostly orbs floating in the fog. Many dismissed it as fatigue, swamp gas, or imagination. Earl's case gave those stories teeth. For 2 weeks, law enforcement dragged the river, scoured the woods, and swept the bridge with cadaver dogs. Nothing. Divers reported an unsettling discovery. Beneath the bridge, the water felt unnaturally cold, dropping nearly 15 degrees compared to upriver. Visibility was near zero, but one diver claimed he saw shapes moving in the silt, just out of light range. Helicopter thermal scans showed no trace of a body, though one pass recorded a strange heat bloom in the fog above the water, a circular pulse that dissipated within seconds. Officials offered several explanations. Accidental fall. Earl may have exited his truck, stumbled, and fallen into the river, but the locked cab door and absence of footprints on the damp bridge deck argue otherwise. Foul play, dismissed. No evidence of struggle, robbery, or forced entry. Voluntary disappearance, rejected by family and co-workers. Earl had no debts, no enemies, and had just put down a deposit on a fishing boat for retirement. Unofficially, one trooper admitted, "It's like he was pulled straight out of the cab without opening the door." Golden Star Freight retired Earl's truck. Replacement drivers complained of malfunctions when assigned the vehicle, radios emitting whispers, headlights dimming, sudden brake failures. One swore he heard someone breathe in the sleeper berth while driving alone at night. The rig was eventually sold out of state, though its new owner later reported the same problems. The hollow bridge itself has become a place truckers avoid. Some reroute entirely, others floor it across, eyes fixed straight ahead. Veteran drivers warn rookies, "Don't stop on the bridge, don't look at the fog." Locals claim the fog glows on certain nights, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. They say if you roll down your window, you'll hear whispers rising from the hollow, not quite words, but urgent, insistent. The West Virginia State Police still list Earl McKinney as missing, presumed drowned. But those who drive the lonely highways know better. Among truckers, the story is told as a warning. If you cross the hollow bridge at night and the fog begins to glow, keep your foot on the pedal. Don't stop. Don't answer the voices. Because once the lights rise from the water, they don't let you leave. On July 14, 2015, Veteran trucker Calvin "Cal" Draper, age 56, was hauling a load of paper products along Interstate 40 in New Mexico, bound for Flagstaff. He was a steady hand, a driver with 30 years of experience and not a single citation on his record. His colleagues described him as cautious to a fault, the sort of man who double-checked his straps and never missed a way station. At mile marker 227, Cal disappeared, leaving behind a mystery that continues to haunt drivers crossing the desert at night. At 1:11 a.m., Cal radioed another driver he'd been convoying loosely with, a friend named Dennis Valdez. "You seeing this?" Cal asked. His voice was tight, strained. Dennis asked what he meant. "There's someone on the road," Cal replied, "walking the shoulder, all white head to toe, like a painter's coveralls, waving me down." Static swallowed his next words. The channel went dead. Minutes later, Cal's rig was found pulled onto the shoulder at mile 227, hazard lights blinking. The driver's door was locked, the truck's engine idled. Cal was gone. Troopers arriving at 1:37 a.m. documented a bizarre scene. Driver's seatbelt still buckled as if restraining a body that was no longer there. Cab interior neat and undisturbed. Coffee still steaming in the cup holder. Wallet, keys, and logbook on the dash. Road shoulder. Soft desert dust showed a single set of boot prints leading away from the rig. The prints extended 30 yards, then ended abruptly, vanishing on flat ground. Trailer, fully sealed, no signs of tampering. The strangest detail, the truck's dash camera, which should have recorded continuously, had stopped at exactly 1:13 a.m. The last frame showed empty highway, except for a pale blur at the extreme left, vaguely humanoid, arm raised as if in greeting. Other drivers traveling I-40 that night gave chilling testimony. Dennis Valdez, Cal's friend, said that 5 minutes after losing radio contact, his CB erupted with distorted whispers. It wasn't English, he told investigators. Or maybe it was just backward. Then, clear as day, I heard Cal's voice. "Don't stop. Don't let him in." Angela Mendez, hauling cattle westbound, swore she saw a glowing figure standing in the median at 1:20 a.m. It looked like a person made of light, waving slow. My whole rig flickered, headlights dashed like the batteries were draining. Then it was gone. Local rancher Jesse Cook, whose property abutted mile 227, reported hearing his horses panic in their corral. They were screaming, slamming against the rails. I went out with a flashlight and saw a man on the shoulder, but when I shined the beam, he vanished. Just gone. Investigators uncovered evidence that defied explanation. Power surge. The truck's diagnostic computer logged an unexplained electrical drain at 1:12 a.m., pulling more current than the rig's systems could produce. Yet no fuses were blown. Radio log. The CB had auto-tuned to channel 19 and transmitted continuously for 47 seconds, though the microphone switch was untouched. Recordings captured only static, punctuated by faint phrases resembling Cal's voice. Residue. A chalky white powder was found clinging to the driver's side mirror. Analysis revealed no known chemical match, part mineral, part organic. Under UV light, it glowed faintly. Old-timers knew mile 227 by another name, the Phantom Stretch. Stories dating back to the 1970s spoke of a white-clad hitchhiker who appeared to truckers late at night. Some said he waved for help. Others claimed he tried to climb aboard. Encounters were always accompanied by electrical malfunctions, dead radios, or sudden fog in the desert. Local folklore ties the phantom to a fatal pileup in 1969 when a semi-jackknifed during a dust storm, igniting a chain reaction crash that killed 11 people. Survivors swore one man stumbled into the dark, waving for help, only to vanish into the storm. Since then, drivers have whispered, "If you see him, never stop." For 3 weeks, law enforcement scoured the desert around mile 227. Drones, helicopters, cadaver dogs all yielded nothing. Cal's boot print stopped abruptly, without sign of struggle or drag. A volunteer searcher claimed she saw a figure in white standing by the abandoned truck during the second night of the operation. By the time others looked, it was gone. Even stranger, Cal's cell phone found in the cab contained a corrupted voice memo timestamped 1:12 a.m. Analysts recovered only fragments. Amid static, Cal's voice is faintly audible. He's outside the glass, face pressed to the window, eyes like light. Investigators floated several possibilities. Voluntary disappearance. Rejected. Cal had no debts, no marital strife, and had just put down a deposit on an RV for retirement travel. Foul play. No evidence of break-in, robbery, or assault. Medical emergency. Unlikely. His health was solid, and his boots' prints suggest deliberate movement, not collapse. Among truckers, the theory is simpler. Cal joined the growing list of drivers taken by the phantom of mile 227. Cal's truck was impounded, then later returned to service. 3 different drivers refused to operate it, citing malfunctions. Radios turning on by themselves, whispers in the speakers, cold spots in the cab. One swore he woke in the sleeper to see a pale figure standing outside the windshield, hand raised. The company finally sold the rig to a small outfit in Texas. Word is, it still breaks down mysteriously on long desert runs. As for mile 227, the site has become infamous among truckers. Many detour around it, even adding hours to their route. Those who cross at night report chills, flickering electronics, and the persistent feeling of being watched. Locals say that sometimes, just before dawn, you can see a man in white standing by the marker, arm outstretched. If you stop, he smiles. If you don't, he follows anyway. The New Mexico State Police still list Calvin Draper as missing, presumed dead. Official files cite unknown circumstances. But truckers know the story by heart. They call it the mile marker 227 Phantom, a tale passed along CB radios and late-night diners, told with a shiver and a warning. If you see him waving, don't stop, don't look, and whatever you do, don't let him in. On the night of November 22, 2018, veteran trucker Howard Lane, age 53, was running a refrigerated load of produce westbound on Interstate 70, approaching the industrial outskirts of St. Louis. The run was routine, the weather clear, but somewhere beneath an abandoned overpass near mile 314, Howard vanished, leaving behind one of the eeriest cases in modern trucking. At 2:42 a.m., Howard radioed dispatch from the highway shoulder. Got movement on the overpass. Figures up there. Too many shadows for one light. When dispatch asked him to clarify, his reply came garbled, then cut short. The GPS signal showed his rig idle under the overpass for exactly 4 minutes before it blinked offline. At 3:15 a.m., another driver, Sheila Andrews, spotted Howard's Freightliner sitting neatly on the shoulder, hazard lights clicking. She pulled in behind to check on him. The scene chilled her. Cab interior, empty, coffee steaming, wallet and logbook on the dash. Engine still running, driver's door locked from the inside. Overpass above, abandoned, concrete cracked and weed-choked, no vehicles in sight. Sheila later told police, "I looked up and I swear I saw something. Shapes moving along the railing even though the overpass had no lights. But when my headlights hit it, nothing." Howard's logbook was open to a fresh page, scrawled in shaky writing. Overpass shadows moving wrong, not people, too tall, too thin, they lean down to watch, keep shifting when you don't look straight. The pen trailed into a line across the paper as if yanked from his hand. Several accounts from that night reinforced the mystery. Sheila Andrews first on scene. The air under that bridge felt heavy. I could hear like whispers, not words, just the sound of a crowd muttering. Local mechanic Chris Dalton, driving eastbound, reported headlights dimming as he passed mile 314. Felt like static in the air. Saw shadows bending across the concrete, but no cars, no people. Nearby resident Marie LeClaire, walking her dog around 3 a.m., claimed she saw black shapes crawling down the bridge supports like insects, melting back into the dark. The Missouri State Highway Patrol logged several anomalies. Electrical surge. Truck diagnostics showed simultaneous failure of GPS, refrigeration, and lighting systems for 3 minutes. Power returned the moment the GPS went offline. Windshield residue. Thin streaks resembling soot but oddly iridescent, as though reflecting light where none existed. Footprints. A single set of Howard's boot prints led halfway up the embankment toward the overpass, then stopped abruptly, no sign of retreat or continuation. Dash cam. Footage ended at 2:41 a.m. The final frame showed the empty road, except for elongated shadows cast against the concrete. Shadows that didn't match the truck's headlights. Truckers had whispered about mile 314 for decades. They called it the overpass of voices. Built in the 1950s, it was decommissioned after the highway reroute in 1987. Legend spoke of a fatal wreck in 1962 when a Greyhound bus struck the bridge support, killing 19 passengers. Survivors reported seeing shadows of people climbing out of the smoke but not touching the ground. Since then, drivers reported radio interference, sudden fog banks, and figures pacing atop the overpass, though no one was ever found. Law enforcement launched a 5-day search. Dogs tracked Howard sent up the embankment but lost it mid-span, as if he had stepped off into thin air. Helicopters with infrared detected cold spots, patches 15 degrees cooler than surrounding air, lingering beneath the bridge supports. One trooper reported hearing faint chatter on his radio, though it wasn't on. He described it as like being in a crowded diner, voices all around but none clear. Despite intensive effort, no trace of Howard was recovered. Official explanations proved unsatisfying. Voluntary disappearance. Dismissed. Howard had a steady marriage, no debts, and had just booked a family vacation. Accident. No sign of fall, struggle, or body. Foul play. Ruled out, cab locked, wallet untouched. No tire tracks or secondary vehicles near the scene. Unofficially, one investigator wrote in his private notes, "The bridge shadows don't match physics. They bend toward the light instead of away." Howard's Freightliner was impounded, then sold at auction. 2 subsequent owners reported the same unnerving details. Electronics failing near overpasses, CB radios activating with static-laced whispers, cold air pockets in the cab at night. One driver swore he woke in the sleeper berth to see tall, thin shadows crawling across the ceiling. The truck was eventually retired and stripped for parts. The overpass itself remains, though truckers avoid stopping anywhere near it. Many cross themselves, accelerate, or switch off radios as they approach mile 314. Locals claim you can still see elongated shadows pacing the railing, even on moonless nights. They say if you honk your horn under the span, the whispers answer back. The Missouri Highway Patrol lists Howard Lane as missing, presumed dead. No body, no evidence, no closure. But among truckers, his story has become a cautionary tale. Never stop beneath the old overpass at mile 314. Don't look up. Don't listen. The shadows are waiting.